Welcome to the Save Our Sperrins campaign, Voices from the Frontline. I'm Marella Fife, your host and a member of the Save Our Sperrins team. At the heart of this struggle are the voices of local people, farmers, families and young campaigners whose homes, work and families are rooted in this place. Their voices are joined by supporters from across the world, standing in solidarity, from professors to artists, from those offering vast expertise to those whose presence alone is an act of support. All have stood with us. In this series, we share stories of resistance, resilience, and hopes from those determined to protect these mountains, their land, their rivers, the very air they breathe, and their community. Let's get started. Today, we're travelling from the Sperrins in Northern Ireland to Navan in County Meath in the Republic of Ireland, home to Europe's largest zinc mine. The Tara mine has been in operation since the late 1970s. It's owned by Boliden, a Swedish multinational, and for decades it has dominated life in and around Navan. Beside the mine is the Randalstown tailing facility, often called a pond, but in truth a giant toxic reservoir held back only by earth banks and filled with poisonous sludge from the mining process. Back in 2015, when plans emerged to extend that tailings dam to stage 6, local people came together to form Residents Against Tailing Extension, known as RATE. They submitted objections, attended hearings, and pressed for their voices to be heard. Out of those efforts came many promises, from liaison committees to community benefit schemes, but not all were delivered. In more recent years, another group, SENT, Saving the Environment of Navan Townlands, has taken up the baton, continuing to raise awareness and resist further expansion. At the heart of this story are two sisters, Nuala Heaney, who was heavily involved during the RATE years, and Mairéad Heaney, who stepped forward in 2023 to carry the struggle onwards through SENT. Together, their experiences span decades, from the early battles over the tailings dam to today's concerns about Boliden's land purchases and the future prospect of mining a deeper ore body known as Tara Deep. For those of us in the Sperrins, their story is both a warning and a gift of wisdom. It shows not just the impacts of living beside a mine, but also the resilience of communities who refuse to stay silent. Good morning, Nuala and Mairéad, and welcome to the podcast. And thanks for joining me in our conversation today. To begin with, could you tell us who are you and where are you today? Either of you can jump in and answer that
first. Yes, we're here in Nuala's home this morning. I live in Dundalk, Marella, and we grew up here in this on this land actually here in Sillogue, our father's farm. Yes, it's about 4 miles from Navan. I don't know what that is in kilometres, but
okay.
That's
And just to clarify, how far are you from the toxic dump? How far is the house?
half a kilometre.
How long have your family been living in the Sillogue area, would you know? Or, how long have you been farming there, or your forefathers?
The Heaney family have been farming in this area since the early 1900s. And we were living in a different farm when I was a young child. And Mairéad was actually born when we moved to this particular farm, 1946. That gives away her age, but never mind. I was born up the hill on Belsaw Hill. I was the last to be born up there, and the family actually moved. My mother stayed back for the birth and with help.
Right.
And the family moved down to this bottom of the hill. Yeah.
How is the proximity to the dump shaped your sense of safety in relation to your home, or your sense of belonging, or even identity with the place?
I was away from home for a long number of years, more than 30 years, and I was very little aware of the actual tailings, the whole development. And at the time, I think people didn't really understand the dangers or the risks or the toxicity that was beside them. So I can't really say very much about that aspect. Mairéad might say more.
Well, similarly, Morella, I went away from home to boarding school in 1959. My sense of it, looking in now, from having gradually been listening to Nuala, particularly around the earlier campaign in 2015 to 17, it began to dawn on me that there was an issue. I mean, up until then, I was aware Tara Mines was there, but I never heard much talk about it, wasn't taking in even the detail that might come up later about all the layoffs and the disputes with the employees, etc. But for here, the families, my sense of it, Morella, is that people just got used to it and, may have had concerns, but nothing, no public awareness, no kind of coming together to, I don't know at what stage people began to campaign. We know there were earlier campaigns before even the one in 2015, but in different townlands. But just that's the general gist of it.
Whenever there's been any campaign of resistance or anything, the media, politicians, all public representatives of every kind concentrate on the economy and the jobs. At all costs, they must be protected, and they do not listen to the concerns of people who are living close to this or the rights of these people.
I agree with you in what you're saying there, and it seems to be a trend that happened in relation to mining everywhere. I want to draw you back for a moment. You were saying, both of you were saying really that you hadn't much awareness of what was going on because you were away geographically from the area. However, your folks were living here, and would it be fair to say that there was a lack of education around the impact of what might be happening with the toxic dump and tailing ponds? Would that be a fair conclusion?
Absolutely correct. And that also is one of the things that I think is the reason for it is that the mining company very careful not to let people know very much. Even now, there's a great lack of transparency and communication, even though they make promises to let us tell, and they talk to the people who are on the committee, but only reveal what they want you to know.
My image for it, it crept in, gradually invaded the area, and people were brought alongside in various ways. Now, it haven't got hard evidence for exactly who or how, but that's the sense I have, is that people were, humoured and, told how safe it was. In fact, the first planning conditions of Tara Mines included assurances the mining site would be screened by trees to reduce the visual impact. Well, that would maybe apply around the big plant. Noise and air pollution would be closely monitored. Large quantities of mining waste or tailings would be carefully managed. And water used in the operation would be purified before being released into the Blackwater River. The tailings is just how many kilometres from, but they're very close, and they actually are kind of covering over. They have redirected the course of the tributary into the Blackwater called the Yellow River, which we have a great feeling about. So, all that on, and the people weren't explained. My brother-in-law, our brother-in-law, Walter, talks about when he was a child being brought down to the Yellow River by his uncle to fish. There were trout in the river.
Right.
And that's all gone. And there was never any, didn't seem to be aware or didn't protest or resist that we know about.
Yeah, Randalstown tailings covers 25 hectares in the townland of Randalstown, which is half of the townland. And since its development, 15 families have disappeared from us because some of their homes have been submerged under it.
Okay, so I want to come back to something just for our listeners, and we've had it happen here ourselves in Save Our Sperrins. We have in the planning application a tailings pond. Can you describe what a tailings pond looks like and how far removed from the description of a pond a tailings pond is? When you look out your window, what can you see, or what do you notice? And then tell me the size of it and so on.
Well, it covers 25 hectares, and it's a huge, it's like a mountain almost, or a large hill. The latest of it is, the latest part is 22 metres high. And it was built in stages, and some of this built on each other, on top of each other.
Toxic waste, including waste from the rock stuff and the chemicals, and Nuala has the list of chemicals there.
Like most tailings from all mining, it contains arsenic, lead, mercury, cadmium, cyanide, iron, zinc, and there was another one that I came across. I lost it now. Sulfide.
Is the tailings, is it lined?
Most recent extension is lined, and they were very insistent about how safe the new lining was and so on.
The first set of embankments was not lined. It was simply earthworks, and that wasn't lined. So now the evidence that they understand that the whole thing is not safe is that over a year ago they applied for permission to build a buttress, so a protecting ring around it, and that's underway. And that is absolutely wonderful in their terms. They gave us a presentation on it in May. So at least something has been done, but we all know it's not if it will collapse, it's when.
And a report which they got from Golders Consultants states that there are 2 areas of risk, one in stage 5B, and there would be 16 households affected, and the other is in stage 19 households affected, and that includes over 100 people.
Now, on that, Morella, they assured us, I asked questions about that at the meeting we had in May, and the head engineer sat down and opposite me and started explaining how they'd come up with these figures.
And none of the families or the households which might be affected have ever been informed about it.
So you don't actually know which households will be affected, only that water or liquid runs downhill, so it's possibly not that difficult to work out who will be affected in the future. Do you actually see the tailings dump? Can you see it from your house?
Our nephew, who lives 2 doors away.
Yeah.
He's the current Heaney farmer. He's
right.
He can see it, and it's like a line on the horizon, a plateau line, Okay. And right beside it is the new greenway, which they helped to build. They helped to they contribute
a little bit.
A little bit,
very
little. Yeah.
And our brother lives even closer. He's next door to his son.
It's really interesting that there's cyanide and mercury and those heavy metals in that. It's not a pond, it's a reservoir, basically, is probably leaching into the the ground water, and who knows where it's showing up, either locally or in fact further down the pipeline, causing all sorts of illnesses and unknown impacts on community. Yeah, it's a worrying thing.
The water supply for Navan comes from the River Blackwater. So if anything did happen, and maybe even without anything happening, they can be affected.
Plus, Morella, I don't know what year, 2021, there was what they called an inrush event. There was a flooding within the mine. And part of the effect of that was it affected the water levels in other townlands over in Robinstown, the other side of Navan, on the Trim side. And those were without water. Their wells, anybody who had wells or whatever, and Tara Mines paid to supply water tanks. And we don't know what the last state of that is.
Right. So in Ireland, a country renowned for its rain and fresh water, people are having to rely on imported water. How ironic and troubling it is for everyone, because this is a problem that's not going to go away. It's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as the years go by. So moving from your family story to the community story, let's turn to you, Nuala, and your years of involvement. You became secretary of the Residents Against the Tailing Extension rate, I believe it's called, during the fight against the Stage 6 tailings dam. Can you explain what rate is and what prompted its formation?
A group of local people were very concerned when they understood Tara Mines were applying for planning application for an extension to the tailings pond, which is now Stage 6. And there was a public meeting in the Gibbs Town Hall, and a committee was formed to fight the campaign. And I got the enviable job of being secretary.
And was there a moment when you realised how serious the struggle really was?
Oh, yes. Well, I think very early on. But looking back, I think our campaign was too low key. There was a lot of concentration on the danger from Tara Mines traffic, heavy goods vehicle passing our road. I don't know how, I've forgotten the actual numbers per hour, but it was really concerning. It's a rural road.
Yeah.
And it was danger to pedestrians and children and everything. During the life of the committee, we had 4 public meetings which had varying numbers of attendees. We had very regular meetings, most of which took place in my kitchen. And we met with public representatives, councillors, Dáil representatives of all parties, except Fine Gael. Helen McEntee never made time. And they all, we'll go and talk to them. And they'd go to Tara Mines, and Tara Mines would reassure them that there was no problem, no danger, and that would be fine. That was all that happened, really. But during the time of our existence, we had meetings with the Tara Mines staff, 3 people, and they made promises, all of which were pretty well broken. They said that they would provide funding for independent testing and monitoring of water, air and soil. They would establish a community benefit scheme for the area surrounding the tailings pond. They do actually give a certain amount of support to the local GAA club and to the community centre in Wilkinstown, which is close by. And I'm not sure if there are many others. They do give support to certain organisations in the town of Navan as well. So they're very proud of themselves for that. They would... A condition which was attached to the planning permission there was to be a liaison group consisting of representatives from Ballyden and from the rate committee, and previous liaison committees had included councillors from Meath County Council. And they also promised, this is a big one, that that extension in 2016 would be the last. They would not develop any further tailings facilities in the area. And now they've bought land with a view to starting a new tailings facility.
In Sillogue.
Having taken over half of Randalstown, now they want to take Sillogue as well.
So really, their commitments, what they said they would do, and how they compare with reality, they just haven't come up with what they said they would do. Is that correct?
They promised to initiate a newsletter in telling us about what's going on during that time, and it has never happened. And furthermore, they actually confuse people, I think, by making statements about this is going to happen and that's going to individuals. But then another of them will come along and say, "Oh no, that's not correct," you know.
And I think, Nuala, you should talk about the actual appeal on Board Planala. That was the end of that committee. There was an appeal.
When the planning permission was granted by Meath County Council, we appealed that planning permission, and a hearing was set up in Navan. And I feel that was really going through the motions. The point that was made by somebody that during that appeal, they didn't have to prove anything. But we made submissions, and some individuals actually employed a consultant to make a submission. The people who are closest to the pond or the dam or the dump, a farming family, and he was quite good, but it wasn't really taking heed of what he was saying. They have great concerns about the environmental aspect, about the effect on their land and their animals, their dairy farmers.
And how did that experience affect your trust in these institutions? From Bolidian to On Board Planala to any other, to government itself. Did it change?
It plummeted. Well, I suppose it wasn't great to begin with, but it's certainly at a very low ebb now. I would question what expertise there is in the Meath County Council Planning Department on mining, and I would also go so far as to question how much expertise there is On Board Planala, which is now called On Commission Planala. Politicians listen and are quite sympathetic, and one in particular was very supportive. She came to some of the meetings in my house.
Okay.
But she's now a member of the European Parliament.
Okay.
But apart from that, they just don't do anything.
Yeah. So in an Ireland where perhaps we were brought up to trust the government and trust the state institutions, it's beginning to look like they no longer represent the people, but represent perhaps big money.
Sorry. A very big concern is that the government and successive governments have a policy of encouraging mining. The Department of Environment, I think, has a very lengthy document in which they outline all the benefits as they see it and praise the mine in Navan as being a very good example. But no mention of the adverse effects of tailings on local communities.
Of course, wouldn't suit the narrative. And it's interesting, these days they talk about, environmentally friendly mining and it being more sustainable and so on. And in actual fact, it's quite the opposite story because the machines have got so big and so powerful. What they used to be able to take out in a year, 30 or 40 years ago, they now take out in a day or a day and a half. And so the waste mounts up, the community problems mount up, and we're left then with a huge debt for future generations to take care of in relation to the health problems it will bring to community in relation to the loss of clean water, fresh air, and healthy soils. And the more we consume, the bigger the demand for mining, and the bigger the problems we're creating for ourselves. We're quite literally shitting in our own nests, to use an awful phrase, but that's exactly what we're up to here in Ireland. And it seems like there's something like 25% of the north of Ireland and 28% of the Republic of Ireland mineral licenses have been issued to commence even yet more mining, even though they say there's no harm in mineral exploration. Well, they're not carrying out mineral exploration for the good of their health. It is with the intention of mining and bringing the associated problems.
And every time the prospecting license runs out, it gets renewed. And I would like to quote a small quote from Earthworks Safety First Guidelines for the management of tailing ponds or tailing dams. And it says, the only safe tailings is the one that's not built.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one.
I discovered that the original first exploration was by a Canadian company through somebody then approached them from here. And I looked them up. They had 30 exploration licenses all over this country in 1964. What I wanted to say, there's a huge irony in our politicians pushing the jobs side of it all the time. This only struck me when I read the chronology. The number of times there have been disputes with the workers and cutting back the number of workers and cutting down their conditions. It's horrendous. And still the politicians don't see that and stand up for jobs and the economy. The whole model of the growth economy. Both of us have read a book by George Monbiot, The Invisible. And it's just a real example of it, what's happened here. That the whole buying into that notion that you invest in something dirty industry and it doesn't matter anything about anything else, just get the money for the people. And why do they want zinc and lead, Morella? In the current atmosphere, it's to do with arms, I am convinced. Anyway, that's gone off your point. But just to point that out, we discovered a lot of literature, a fabulous set of points from, and I think we shared this with your group, Philip Cantwell, God rest him, he died within the year. He worked for a while in Tara Mines and subsequently was a member of Meath County Council and did attend some of the meetings with Blyden, but I don't know what happened that it didn't work out. He might have been one of the people that resigned from it. But he really illustrates exactly how they operate, and all that literature is there and we have it on record.
The fact of the matter, Morella, is that the profits go to Sweden. It's a Swedish company.
That's
correct. The benefits go to the area, and the adverse, outcomes come to us,
local people
in this area.
Yeah. And thus it is everywhere, where the benefits, the money leaves the country and the locals are left with a problem that's irreparable and goes on forever. It never goes away, the problem.
Yeah, they do pay something to the government, but it doesn't amount to a lot.
The government had a 25% share up until 1980 something, when it was sold off to the company that had it at the time, which was a different company.
Japanese.
50 million it was sold for, the 25% share. They're turning over millions and billions every year. Honestly, it's just horrendous.
And they claim in the report for 2022 that they are, we create value for shareholders and society, and they claim that they're contributing to the climate change fight by producing these minerals, which are not actually critical raw material metals. and they talk about how the cutting-edge competence ensures competitiveness and the least possible environmental impact. And then they go on that to a large extent, conditions for our success depends on the surroundings of the operations, with local stakeholders such as Indigenous people and neighbouring communities, as well as other factors like energy supply. And then they claim to be a good neighbour to everybody, which we collaborate in matters large and small with different stakeholders in the communities where we operate. That is not our experience.
Okay, that's very clear. And it's good to have this voice of wisdom that can show communities that are currently being threatened with mineral exploration licenses your experience on the ground. This is such a valuable experience, and that's why you're invited here to talk about that today, so people really get it. I want to come back to something there you said about the growth, going for growth, which I would really call it the growth death cult, because it's just consume, and then to consume we produce waste, and then that waste, in the case of mining, is there's nothing anyone can do about it. It's just there for ad infinitum. Interesting that when you talk about all the labour disputes that occurred in the mine over the years, of course, what's happening is miners are losing their jobs because it's becoming ever more mechanised, ever more bigger, huge machinery is doing the jobs of many, many miners now. And when a mine used to be there for maybe 30 years, now they can get in 5 or 10 years, take out everything, extract everything that they need, and then abandon the project and throw a couple of 100,000 at it to clean it up, per se, and move on to the next. So calling it, environmentally friendly is nonsense. It's causing even more damage because of the size of the machinery than in fact, the mining in the past was more environmentally friendly than today's mining, even though they claim for it to be, because of technology and everything else, which is absolute rubbish.
Actually, not very long ago, the workforce was about 600. And after the year-long closure in 2022, it was reduced to 400.
There you go.
Now, I think it had been smaller before that, but...
Oh, I'll keep watching the space. You see it gradually reducing and reducing and reducing. That's a given.
Yeah.
Mairéad, you've been active more recently through SENT, Saving the Environment of Navan Townlands. And for those who've never heard of it, what is SENT and how did you get involved?
Well, I'll tell you how. It's a very simple story and I'll never forget it. That during the original campaign, the rate campaign, I obviously was over and back visiting Nuala, and I was conscious of the pressure she was under with the work she was doing as the secretary. But to my shame, I really never got fully involved and fully interested. I was moving house at the time. That's my excuse. But anyway, May 2023, one day Nuala said to me, guess what? Balaiden are now buying up land across the road. They've bought up one farm at that stage, and since then they've bought up the other. And the plan is to build a new tailings facility, dump, across the road from where we grew up. Something hit me right in the gut, Marella. I just said, well, I'm in, and I could see how tired Nuala was and frustrated with her experience. So I went to the next public meeting, and at which there was a very good turnout, and people were invited to introduce themselves and say why they were there and what they might be able to offer. So I pondered and I said, well, look, I have experience in community work. I have some understanding of systems analysis, and I have, a bit of time. I moved into my retired home. It was a sheltered village. thinking that I was going to relax and read and just, go for walks for the rest of my life. But anyway, here I was presented with this. So I got fired up and I joined that group, and that's sent. And it took a while for us to get our name. But one of the things that really influenced us, Marilla, was that neither Nuala nor I can't remember how we heard about the Climate Festival in Leitrim in August of 2023. But we persuaded a few people to go up. Larry Henry went up. Well, I shouldn't be mentioning names, but he won't mind. Larry went up.
He's the chair.
He's the chair of our group. And subsequently another member went up. And he was the one that I had proposed before we went to that we should get in a consultant to help us to plan our strategy. And we had meetings with him from development perspectives, a man called Bobby McCormick in Drogheda. So after the experience with yourselves up at that wonderful pouring rain festival in Leitrim, we got to go ahead and we got the consultation. And out of that, we organised 4 public consultation meetings. And the main result of that was that people got to articulate their main concerns. And the headings were water quality, health and well-being, dam integrity. So there was an awareness among people at that point that the dam would not survive forever, that there were risks with it, like Nuala has been describing. The environmental impact and the legacy that was going to be left to generations to come of toxic waste. So the next step, we got a report and a list of recommendations, and one of the recommendations was that we should approach Dundalk Institute of Technology or some third level institute to see could we get help from students. So I live in Dundalk, so approached Dundalk Institute, and we got 2 wonderful young students in doing media studies who came and helped produce this leaflet for us, our brochure. And they also produced a video. They came and interviewed. Came on a walk around the tailings. One of the committee brought myself along with them, another Wellies Day. And they produced a video. And the other thing, they set up our Facebook. We're very, very poor on that, but we'll have to learn and get a young person to take it on. Okay. So then the name actually was one of the things that pushed us on. So after a lot of toing and froing and trying out different names, we agreed that it was very important that it would have a positive tone to engage more people, not just here, but in all the townlands around Navan. So the name was Living the Environment of Navan Townlands, which really was a good move. Yeah. Since then, about a group in Navan and have had contact with them, but we need to develop more. Wild About Navan, and they're very interested in the whole biodiversity side of things.
If I could interrupt there, Marilla, every time they make a planning application, it includes a consultant's input on the environment, and it always states that they're going to do mitigating measures. Now, I don't know how you can mitigate against the destruction of habitats and hedgerows and all kinds of natural phenomena.
Just by the way, Nuala visited, was up on top of the dam at some point with others. Yeah. And your moonscape, she said. It's like a moonscape. You see, photographs will show you. We can send you those.
Would it be fair to say that your personal tipping point was when you heard they were buying more land around Sealog and to expand on the tailings dump? And just a comment here, often we get accused of NIMBYism. What? I often think, isn't it great that NIMBY, not in my backyard for those who don't know what NIMBYism is, and isn't it great that there are NIMBYs? Because otherwise, all of this would be going on and nobody would be aware of the output and the down the line legacy that we're leaving for future generations. And thank goodness for NIMBYs.
I said I have a new tag now to put onto my CV.
Yeah, but point out that it's a new dam.
Now, Marcella, you did say there,
Expansion.
You mentioned expansion, but actually it's not expanding the existing dam. It's building a totally new dam, taking over half of Silloak as Nuala, plus more of the townland behind, which has already been affected. Simonstown, which is beside the racecourse, Navan racecourse, they have been affected previously, and they had a campaign we only became aware of recently, and they have joined us now. Simonstown, which is nearer to Navan.
And thank you for correcting me on that. I was trying to read it all over quickly in the last few days, and obviously some facts escaped me. But
no, you were asking.
I was saying a word used by our Taoiseach in his preface to the government's environmental document was unconscionable, and in my view, it's unconscionable to think of putting another tailings in the same area.
Are they still processing with cyanide in Navan? Do they still use cyanide?
A very good question. That's a really good question for us to put at our next meeting for clarity. Thank you.
And also mercury is another good one to ask, because if your local population know that one, cyanide is already leaching into the groundwater table, and two, that they're still using it and mercury, the whole population around Navan should be very interested, because everyone's health is at risk. It's probably something worth looking into. Do you sense at all if the company or the authorities have changed their tactics at all, and how does that affect how you respond? And it may not be.
All I can say back to that, my just immediate response to that is they have to have been affected by the closure of last year. For a while, they seem to be maybe coming to terms with the workers are a bit more assertive, let's put it, in this past phase. So that's going to be a consideration. They talk about that it all depends on the price of zinc, whether they'll go ahead with the next phase or not. Politicians, I don't think there's any shift at all. They're just still singing the tune of the jobs, and the benefit to the economy. So there's a huge amount of awareness raising needed, not for the community, for politicians, if and when they will listen to us.
Yeah, there sure is. And what do you find is working best for you in building awareness in the community today?
That's a really difficult one. This was the first, we thought this was like, what would you call it? $1 million stuff, and we did distribute it. But we have a box of them sitting by being used. The Facebook account, not really active. And so there's a lot of energy needs to go into both promoting those things. But I think that, to me, I think Nuala will agree with me, the linking in with people like the Wild About Navan will probably be a good way to go. Now, you're probably aware from our CAME meetings. I forgot to mention that was a huge, huge development for us that made a difference to this campaign compared to the last one. The involvement in CAME and the support and the learning from other people's experience has just made a huge difference to my perception.
Can you explain to our listeners what CAME is, please?
CAME is an Irish word for a circle of protection. And the group has been formed, I'm not sure how many years, but it's communities from all over Ireland, north and south, coming together, communities against injustice in mining. And there are monthly meetings. And when we joined, there was a part-time worker who was great at keeping it all together. But fair play to the voluntary group now. It still meets every month, and there's always something new to be learned, and it's heartening to be able to report the progress, whether it's only that much or a big piece or good news from different communities. It kind of helps us to keep going and to keep inspired.
And I say also, Marilla, that the people who are involved in these resistance campaigns, most of them are in work and have families, and it's very, very difficult to get in. I know you probably experience the same thing.
Yes, that's a big factor here. That my reflection on the work that has happened in Cent since I joined it, and it would relate to what Nuala's and reflect what the experience was for Rate as well. That very point that Nuala's made, that trying to engage people in the community who are busy working all the hours to buy their houses, to raise their families, to live with their families and bring their children to this, that and the other and to look after them, that these people, are just, they're aware maybe, but they can't give time and, effort into the work. So that's a big factor that holds us back. But on the other hand, there is a growing, and I mean, even in the local community, in Wilkinstown and in Bollygib, there's a lot beginning. The community centres are really getting going. They're buzzing now at this stage. So one of the things that's really going to help us, I think, is that Linda is coming to do a case study for us on Tara Mines. It's coming next week, in fact. Yeah. So when we get something back from Linda, we'll invite her to come and meet with the community and present her findings. And a lot of that will be about the heritage and the archaeological damage that has been done. They have covered over Bronze Age site, including a church and the well is half covered. We can still access the well with great difficulty, St. Anne's Well. And that, we discovered last night, had a tunnel to Randalstown House that Nuala mentioned, owned by the Everards. They were involved in tobacco.
Experiment to grow tobacco.
That happened in
1930.
Yeah. So there's a lot of heritage to be explored and and not just here, but Simonstown, the other community I mentioned over the other side of I was going to say the mountain, but over near Navan, they had an archaeological dig as well. And I'm not clear, I can't give you accurate information how much of that was covered over, because Simonstown has part of the tailings on it as well.
All right.
So a whole lot of stuff there. And I see the community, especially Bollygib, where people came from all the different Gaeltachts.
Neo Galway, Cork and
Kerry. In 1937. They're great at getting together. They've produced a fabulous book about their ancestors, and they have yesterday just opened a lovely wall. A lovely wall commemorating the people who travelled from these Gaeltachts. So there's an appetite among those people, that community, and wider, the non-Gaeltacht people as well, for getting involved, learning about the area. So I'm hoping that will be another way in. Yeah.
Having heard both of your stories of activism, let's step back and look at the bigger picture. The long view across both of your experiences. What are the most visible changes you've seen in the land, in the community, or in people's health?
For example, in the land, my brother, a retired farmer now, whose son is farming their land, at least a land opposite them for about 50 years, and that is part of the land which has now been bought up by Tara Mines. So our nephew has to look elsewhere to get enough land to progress his farming. People's health, there's a lot of concern. Every time there's a planning application, health issues come up without fail. but they have never been addressed properly by the company or by politicians, and nobody has ever researched the incidence of, say, cancer or whatever in the area. And that would be a difficult project. You'd have to get somebody like a university department or somebody to take it on. And it seemed previously anyway to be an insurmountable problem, but we ought to really look at it again.
Yeah, that on that point, Marilla, I was very struck by what you shared with us the other day about approaching support groups, cancer support groups and so on, and the point that Jacqueline made, saying it's not up to us to prove that it has affected health, but we can ask questions and ask them to prove that it hasn't affected health. There are lots of cases of cancer, and one of the committee was reared in Navan, and he said in the town of Navan, which is on the side nearest the dam, there have been a huge number of increase in cases of cancer among the people where he lived when he grew up.
And I make the point that the well-being residents of the local area should be taken into account. For example, I find myself in a state of almost permanent anxiety since I heard about the plans for the second dump. And there are other people whose livelihood will be affected and also the values of their property.
Yeah. They won't be able to sell their homes.
Right.
Move.
Interestingly, recently I was at a meeting about a dump called Moboy Dump up in Derry, and there has been illegal dumping going on there for over 30 years. There's millions of tons of waste in it, and in that waste it contains everything from heavy elements to waste from hospitals. It's all illegal. It's never been a planned dump, and the people who are fighting for their rights in that corner of the world have elected to start their own community inquiry because they're not able to get a public inquiry. So they're starting a community inquiry, and that will be a very interesting model to follow. I was at the meeting. There must have been at least 80 people at it. And I'm sure there's a huge amount of people there because there's an area in Derry it's notorious for cancers, as the river Fawn, I think it is, runs past the dump, and the water for Derry comes from this river. So watch that space, and it's a model because then when a community inquiry occurs and it has all the levity and everything of a public inquiry, the people themselves are creating the inquiry. It seems to make those in power step up and take notice. And coming back to your own situation, as with us all, you have no measurements of the people's health in place, etc. beforehand, but taking the attitude of putting it back at them and getting them to prove that they haven't caused it would be so interesting. I remember reading about the Auchnish aluminium plant down in Shannon, and those poor people down there have horrendous sicknesses and illnesses, plus all their cattle and they're no longer able to farm, and all the blood testing and samples that were taken were mysteriously lost by the government. And it is shocking what's going on down there. It is absolutely shocking. It could be that's the situation that's occurring in Navan, but it's hidden at the minute. And all it just needs to be revealed.
Actually, Tara Mines, Ballyde and all have always had a local GP making regular visits to the mine to monitor the health of the workers. but it doesn't occur to them to monitor the health who are living in close proximity to the tailings. And they should be doing that.
Even if they are doing it, it's them that's doing it. It's not an independent authority.
Just going back to the visible changes, one thing that has just come to my mind is driving in the Kells Road to Navan, which is coming from our side into Navan. They bought up a whole lot of houses and boarded them up. So there are families affected out that way as well, not to mention the ones that Nuala talked about here. But so
why did they buy up those houses, you know? Why did they buy up those houses?
One of the reasons for some of it was that there was a group of housing which was intended for built by the British Legion for soldiers after the war, and Tower Mines eventually bought them. I presume that a lot of the soldiers died off and so on, but I think part of the reason I heard an explanation was that people who living in those houses were complaining about vibrations from the mine which were underneath them. But there were people living in them up until about 18 months ago, and they applied for planning permission to demolish the houses and also to build replacements. But they did the demolition, but they never did the replacement building in a time when we have a housing crisis.
Okay. And Morella, mentioning that the vibrations, like we've a niece lives over in Ardbracken, and she talks about feeling having felt the vibrations underground. There's a warren, a parallel system down underneath of roads stretching right out from the mining area. So, you know.
So are you telling me that the mine is actually under the town of Navan? Is that what you're saying?
Parts of it, but it's certainly under certain townlands, certainly under that area where our niece lives.
Okay, right. Be really interesting.
And that brings into my mind this town in Sweden now, where Balaiden comes from, where they have had to move a whole town because of the danger of sinkhole, I don't know what they called it, falling into the ground. The big news was about moving the church. It was a big operation. But in that article, it was mentioned that there's now a law in Sweden that no mining should take place nearer than 3 kilometres near any residential area.
Right. I think I saw a video of that church being moved on Facebook or somewhere, and I thought that they're only showing the church and they're not talking about the rest of the town. You know, what an upheaval and you know, so you're saying that the mine is at least closer than 3 kilometres to the whole of Navan. Some of it, bits of it actually running under Navan.
We need to follow that up and find out about that law and ask questions about it.
In your view, how's the mine shaped democracy locally, or is it shaping or people's trust in decision makers, or your own willingness to speak up? So this question comes from, you know, change only comes from the bottom up. It never comes from the top down. And to bring change, people have to stand up and speak out. And that can be awfully daunting. If you've led a life where you mostly haven't stood up and spoken out about issues. Have you any comments around any of that?
It hasn't, in our particular cases, it hasn't affected our willingness to speak out, but it might affect. I think there's always a problem about upsetting people who work in the mines, because every time when we were campaigning before, people would say, "Oh, what about the jobs?" And you know, people might lose their jobs if the mine closed, or if there was any reduction in their output or whatever. But I think we're coming to at least I am coming to the point where I feel that we have to stand up for our own rights. They have a perfect right to work in Tower Mines if they so wish, but we have a right to our health and well-being and safety from risk.
Yes, on that question, Morella, certainly, I mean, it repeatedly, and I mean, listening to the Nuala's experience with the earlier campaign and my own experience, both of our experience with the Scent campaign, the level at which politicians, local councillors are prepared to engage with us is just abysmal. You know, they just don't come. But apart from that, just taking up that point about people locally don't want to speak out. I think it has affected a level of trust within the community. People aren't free to speak freely about their concerns because that thing of fearing of upsetting somebody whose relative works in the mines or whatever, or has some stance on it, you know.
In the local council elections, we're tagged on to Kells town, and the politicians there for that area get plenty of votes in Kells, so they don't really take much interest in our situation. A few do, but not all of them that should.
So Nuala, you spoke a little bit there that you have this constant low-grade anxiety because of the new tailings dam. When you think about your own resilience and that of your community, how is the strength of your resilience, or does your resilience come at a cost? Because you've stood up for years and you said no.
I think it comes at a cost, and also I have aged since that, and I have also had several orthopedic surgeries, and I just feel a bit tired sometimes, but I still have a very strong interest, and I have opted to do as much research as I can to pass on to the Scent group.
Okay.
She's very active of the Scent group, Morella.
Behind the scenes.
She's an honorary committee member, to be honest with you, because she gets all the bump, but she doesn't attend meetings, but that's the only difference. Yeah?
Yeah.
And I can see it affecting her.
From here, I'd like to bring it back down closer again to the wisdom you might share with communities like ours and Sperrins. If you were speaking directly to the families in Greencastle, what would you want them to know?
Oh, I wish people had told us that what mining companies are really like, how their tactics that they use. And I wish somebody had advised us more strongly to fight about our rights and to not be so influenced by offending people who work in the mine, and to make a lot more noise, really. Every time there's something in the media, in the local paper and so on, we might be asked for a quote, but then there'd be naturally for balance, Tara Mines would be consulted as well, and they would more or less say that they're engaging with all the stakeholders and this, that and the other, the usual language.
Yeah, I would echo exactly what Nuala's saying. Your question of speaking directly to families, I would say listen to SOS, listen to your campaign group and believe what they're telling you, take it on board. And even if you can't do anything actively, just keep educating yourself, keep raising your awareness, keep seeing this for what it is. Support Sperrins, the Save Our Sperrins group. That's what I would say to them. And I like what Nuala said, just total inspiration by the way you're carrying out your campaign.
On a different tack, in both your groups, when there were there times of division or fatigue set in? And how did you manage to carry on?
I think our group was pretty united, and we fought as hard as we were able for the few of us that were working on it, and given people's commitments, family commitments and so on. But I think we didn't find enough experts and stronger voices, in the media or wherever, as such as you have Professor Amy Strecker, or people such as that, who would be well able
to
present. But the problem is partly that, as some of the experts have said, we are resource poor in comparison to the mining company. We really probably need to get on with doing some fundraising.
That prompts me to say, and that's chicken and egg stuff, because my sense of it is that it's impossible to get good fundraising going until people are engaged, emotionally with the issue. I don't know, Nuala didn't answer what kept her going, but as far as I'm concerned, we've had quite a lull since our last public meeting was June 2024. Now, since then, 2 strong members of the group have become involved directly in bringing new life into the local community centre, and they're doing a fantastic job. So we don't begrudge them.
Yeah.
It has decimated the group,
Sure.
We need to engage more people. That's what I meant earlier when I said I'm hoping that Linda's work may be one little or big piece that will engage people to come back in. We've also talked about getting more engagement on the biodiversity side of things, which is engaging people, around the place, but to kind of get more of that going, relating to the actual effects. Use the booklet that we got, the tailings booklet. We really want to get that moving to engage with teachers and, people who are involved with young people and adults to get, really informed. So I think, so when there's a lull, I mean, there were times in the past year since that last public meeting when I kind of said it to Nuala too, like, what is it? Where are we at? Like, there's nobody responding. There's nobody coming back to me on this, that, and the other. But on the other hand, I have created this image. I love doing jigsaws, Marella. During COVID, Nuala had a 1,000-piece jigsaw, and I was able to be here during the intervals, the lulls in COVID. And it took me a year to put a 1,000-piece jigsaw together. So my image for the work now is that there's jigsaw pieces, and I can see quite a number of them. And I keep feeding in bits. And other people have pieces of the jigsaw as well. And it's about uncovering all those pieces and seeing how do we link them up and not be overwhelmed by the size of the task.
I think a part of the problem also is that there is no immediate threat. There's no application has been lodged for this new dump or anything. So people are a bit lethargic about getting involved and fighting,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think perhaps they don't understand how long a campaign we need to mount, that it's not just suitable to wait until it's almost happening. You need to be preparing.
Echoing Nuala's point about expertise, that's a biggie. And we are fortunate in that we have identified and got fabulous help from a geologist,
hydrogeologist
and a hydroecologist. That's what he is. And he has done a fantastic service to us. He has sent us a report, and he has researched all the Balaiden documents and council documents and everything else, and he has put together a set of recommendations that are wonderful for helping us to go forward to the meetings with Balaiden. But that side of it, is very slow. But we do need to get more engagement from the community and find ways to do that and get people involved. We have interest from the creative arts section of the Navan Solstice Centre. There's a lady there in charge of the arts section, and she committed to helping to do a project on the Yellow River, for instance. The Yellow River, the Blackwater River, and the whole area. So we have to get back to her.
Yeah.
And I said about what we also, the two of us, tell her about our trip to Dunsany Castle.
Oh yes, last year in the summer, well, it was the end of the summer, I think, we visited Dunsany Castle, where Randall Plunkett, the owner, he's a filmmaker, but he's an environmentalist as well. He has rewilded a large part, if not all, of the estate which he inherited. And we approached him before we left and told him about our situation, and he offered to help if needed. So we have some people to call on.
We need to
Okay.
do all that and things like that. Yeah. And also going back to yourself, Morella, your kind offer of coming down to meet with us. I've already spoken. Yesterday was an event down in Ballagib that I mentioned for the people from the Gaeltacht areas, and I spoke to a number of people there about your campaign and about your willingness to come and meet with us. And so there's a few significant movers down there know about it now, and I encourage them that if and when it happens, that they'll rally people to come. So little moves like that.
It is. We always find in Save Our Sperrins, when we have an event, it gives us more energy, gives us fresh energy. There's a lot of energy going into creating something, and then but it feeds you as well, and it's so heartening to see new faces turning up or making new connections, and your story just completely resonates with us, because it's not a huge team in Save Our Sperrins either, but for a long time it just took so long to expand it out, but really there's a few of us. Well, I can say for sure I've dedicated my life to this. I can't see anything that I could be at that would be any better. And if we get the mining stopped here in the Sperrins, it'll continue for me. It'll continue all across the island of Ireland. There's no mining in Ireland, because that's what we need to aim for. It's not just we have to change everything, change policy, and but we get to go to work in the arena that we can work on. And for me, at the minute, it's Save Our Sperrins, and if it expands up to whatever, then it expands out. So we can just do the best we can in the arena that we're given, and hope for the best after that. So we've heard about Tara Deep, and could you explain what that is and why it matters for the future of mining here?
That is a new body of ore which the Ballydon have found and are very anxious to exploit. Although since the closure, the the union representatives for the miners are getting very anxious that they're not actually getting on with it. So I think we feel a bit unsure. It will all possibly depend on the price of lead and zinc in the world markets. We would be very concerned and troubled if that goes ahead, because that would mean that they will need a new tailings facility. And because the capacity of the present one will only be last until 2029 at the earliest, but possibly 2033. But they would need to have their new one, if they get there, in position before they get into full production of that ore body.
So just to fill out a little bit about that, the Tara Deep, the new Tara Deep deposit resembles Tara's main ore body, but has more complicated structure and is at a greater depth, between 1,200 metres and 1,900 metres, going down that deep into Mother Earth. They are continuing their search as well for further ore deposits, and they undertook a 3D seismic survey in Meath earlier this year. That was in 2021. So they're not just focusing on Tara Deep, they're looking at other areas more towards the Kells direction. We have data on that, the townlands that they have looking for exploration licenses. So, even if they don't do Tara Deep, they will still need another tailings if they go ahead. And they gave us, there's nothing happening really, that sort of story. And some people believe that I asked the question of another member of the group. So why have they bought up the farms? Well, it wouldn't be a big deal for them with the big money they have to just sell them off again, So that's a bit naive, I think, you know. So so that's where we are with Tara Deep and the danger of a new tailings. But like really coming back to now, what we have to concentrate on is getting accountability for what's there already and the dangers inherent in it. We questioned them about the level of funding that's put aside for for a possible disaster and the eventual closure, which the amount they gave us is 12.5 million. 12.5 million for the size of. So, and again, there's a whole very complicated formula for working out why and how that much money. But that's enough.
It'd be very
And
interesting.
they will be responsible.
It would be very interesting to know what percentage of their profits is 12.5 million.
Yes, they will be responsible for 30 years after it closes for anything that goes wrong.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then after
And then
that,
what
it's over
happens
to the
after
Irish
that?
government.
Oh, it's over to the Irish government.
She says supposedly they will be responsible. Yeah, but that's the story we have.
Who will hold them accountable for maintaining it
Precisely.
for 30 years or whatever.
What urgent message would you send to other communities in Ireland now facing the prospect of mining?
Wake up.
Educate everybody as
Become
to the
aware.
risks and the dangers and the experience of people like us and you.
Go and visit Save Our Sperrins and talk to the people up there. Really, you know, and join came, educate, learn, you know, because it's just so overwhelming that the whole technology, the techno speak, I don't know what you want to call it, the jargon that goes on around all of the, you know, the technical language, the engineering stuff, all of that. It's the expertise issue again, I think, finding a way to engage good expertise that will commit to helping.
Do not be persuaded by all the talk about the benefits to the economy and the jobs, and raise the questions about the tailings. What will become of the tailings? Will they process them in a different way? Will they look after the communities that are affected by the presence of tailings?
Would you suggest to them to wait until the planning permission goes in, or what would you suggest?
Oh, I think maybe if they have any hint that maybe even all communities now should be looking up the prospecting licenses and seeing where is our government considering granting prospecting licenses, and start as soon as you see anything mention of that there's mineral deposits in your area, then start learning. Yeah. I'd love to see a major publicity countrywide education program, including a series on RTE and TG Car, anywhere we can get it, to show what mining is about and what happens and how it starts and how it evolves and what goes on. We haven't a clue. Yeah.
You're right. Here in the north, we're lucky enough to be able to stop people coming onto the land to take soil samples. That has been removed from the people in the Republic. You cannot stop someone coming onto your land, and I think that came in 2017. Our experiences in Save Our Sperrins is get into action at once. Don't wait another day, because you will need every single hour to fight this if mineral exploration or mineral licensings have been granted for your area. Because with mineral licensing comes mining, and they're not here, as I said in the past, they're not here for the good of their health. They're here to mine the country.
That brings to mind how insidious the whole thing is, that it's all going on under the radar. We know through CAIM and through yourselves and other groups that how the government sends delegation to the Canadian Conference on Mining every year and says, come this way, we're open for business and we'll make it easy for you. And there's not a word about it in our media or in our I mean, I know there were articles, that man Jerry McGovern wrote those articles, but they're not widespread. It's not, the general community does not know that this is a big part of the agenda, and it's replacing fossil fuel extraction. I couldn't get the word. It's coming along, on the heels of that. If that gets sorted, then we still have this mining going on.
Finally, what gives you hope? What keeps you motivated to continue speaking out after all these years?
I always feel that you can never say never. You have to pursue this until whatever the final decision is made, even if it goes against you as it did the last time round.
Gives me hope is that I've seen how people do rally when they get a glimpse of what it's all about. And it's about discovering that more and more people have the willingness to do the right thing when they realise what's wrong. And that's very difficult for every single one of us, and the speaking out is part of it, but the learning first and then using that knowledge as power to rally with other people, make connections. As I said, somebody in a conversation yesterday, I feel like that quotation from St. Paul, speaking in season and out of season about it. Do you know what I mean? That taking every opportunity without railroading people, but just watch out for places where it's okay, where it's good to have those conversations and do it.
Yeah.
But the hope is around, it's possible to do something, not nothing, You can't sit and say we can't do anything. We can do something, and even if it's only a little thing.
Thank you both so much for sharing your time and your experiences today. Your voices carry a wisdom that's vital for the Sperrins and for communities right across Ireland.
Thank you very much, Marella.
Thank you.
Two sisters, two dams, rising higher with each stage, years apart, yet carrying the same thread of resistance. Nuala, who stood at the front when the objections were filed, and Mairéad, who stepped forward when the weight grew too heavy to leave behind. What they've given us is not just a story of Navan, it's a mirror, a warning, a gift of hard-earned wisdom, and now it's ours to carry. What we do with it will shape not only the Sperrins, but every place in Ireland where the ground beneath us is being sold. With gratitude, we close this conversation. You've been listening to the Save Our Sperrins Podcast, Voices from the Frontline. Thank you for joining us today. All the links you'll need, from campaign updates to our social media pages, as well as links shared by today's guests and resources mentioned in the conversation, are available in the show notes. Please take a moment to share this podcast with friends, neighbours, or anyone who cares about protecting our land and communities. And don't forget to hit the follow button on your podcast platform. It really helps the algorithm spread these voices further. Together, our voices are stronger. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep standing with the land, the water, the air, and the people who protect them.